Many of the deals open multiple channels for anyone to funnel cash to a sitting president, often in ways that are untraceable. Even as he is ripping healthcare away from millions, he does still seem to have a knack for using his job to make money for himself. Far from being a self-made business genius, Trump got tens of millions of dollars from his father, blew through it all in a series of failed businesses, and of course the hard pivot to cryptocurrency, something Trump called a scam just a few years ago.
Long before Donald Trump became president again in 2025, the signs of financial trouble were already written across his past. But not many people were paying attention. The truth is, even before his first term, Trump was already showing signs of being more smoke than fire, more image than reality. 14 years ago, he sat in the middle of a celebrity roast, pretending to laugh while people mocked his wealth, his image, even his future ambitions. But behind the fake smile, he had one demand, one untouchable line: no one was allowed to joke about him having less money than he claimed. That wasn't about pride, it was fear.
Trump's one rule was, don't say I have less money than I say I do. Literally, anything else was fair game.
Trump's obsession with appearing rich isn't just about ego, it's about survival. He built his identity on the image of a wealthy genius. But when reporters began digging into his financial records during his first term, the illusion started to fall apart. He wasn't a brilliant businessman. He was someone who had burned through his father's millions, made one bad deal after another, and kept sinking money into failing properties that barely held together.
That Donald Trump's image of immense business acumen, success, and wealth is a mirage. During his first term in the White House, the New York Times reported that far from being a self-made business genius, Trump got tens of millions of dollars from his father, blew through it all in a series of failed businesses.
By the time 2025 rolled around and Trump was back in office, his businesses were no longer symbols of success. They were crumbling reminders of a dream gone wrong. Trump Tower's famous escalators were shut off. Luxury tenants had vanished. Revenue was shrinking. From New York to Chicago, the buildings carrying his name were either half empty or bleeding cash. This isn't just about real estate, it's about the kind of man sitting in the White House today. A man who isn't focused on leading a country, but on protecting an empire that is already collapsing. When leaders are desperate, they stop thinking about the country, they start thinking about themselves. And that's where Trump's story takes a darker turn. His need to appear rich, powerful, and unstoppable pushed him to chase any opportunity to survive, even if it meant putting the presidency up for sale. When Donald Trump returned to the White House in 2025, many thought it was about power, but the deeper truth is far more dangerous. It was about survival. After losing billions and watching his business empire fall apart piece by piece, Trump wasn't coming back to lead America. He was coming back to save himself. By the end of his first presidency, the numbers told a frightening story. Trump Tower in New York, the building that once symbolized his rise, was nearly empty. The escalators no longer worked because they led to nowhere. His Wall Street office tower couldn't even generate enough income to pay its own mortgage. These weren't minor setbacks, they were signs of collapse.
His office tower on Wall Street is a quarter vacant, and its revenue is millions short of what he needs just for mortgage payments.
It didn't end there. Trump Tower in Chicago had over 70,000 square feet of retail space that had been empty for 16 years. 16 years without a single tenant. Even when he sold his infamous DC hotel for what seemed like a huge amount, he still managed to lose money. His brand was supposed to represent luxury, but it had become a joke. Everything with his name on it was either empty, outdated, or underwater in debt.
At Trump Tower in Chicago, 70,000 square feet of retail space has been empty ever since it was finished 16 years ago.
That's the real reason Trump needed the presidency again. Not for the people, not for America, but for the cash. He was watching his empire collapse like a house built on sand. And when that kind of fear takes over a man like Trump, it creates a dangerous situation for the rest of the country. Because now, the presidency isn't about national security or public service. It becomes a lifeline for one man's broken fortune. Trump didn't fix his businesses by improving them. He fixed them by turning public office into a private business. Licensing deals popped up across the world. Saudi Arabia suddenly became a big investor. His brand returned, this time not just in real estate, but in Bibles, shoes, fragrances, even phones. He once called cryptocurrency a scam, then quickly embraced it when it could help him earn fast money. The public thought they were electing a leader. What they got was a desperate CEO using presidential power to keep himself afloat. After returning to power in 2025, Trump didn't waste any time, but instead of focusing on America's problems, rising costs, broken healthcare, a shaky economy, he focused on his own wallet. He turned the presidency into a business operation. Licensing deals started appearing around the globe. New investments flowed in from countries like Saudi Arabia, and suddenly, Trump-branded products were everywhere, from shoes to fragrances to something as absurd as a Trump Bible. What makes this moment especially troubling is that Trump once called cryptocurrency a scam. But now that he's back in office and back in financial trouble, he's fully embraced it. Why? Because crypto offers something traditional banking has not: untraceable money. In other words, a perfect tool for someone who wants to collect cash without leaving fingerprints.
And of course, the hard pivot to cryptocurrency, something Trump called a scam just a few years ago.
It's one thing for a businessman to try and save his brand. It's another thing entirely when that businessman also happens to be the president of the United States. That's when personal desperation turns into national danger, because every deal, every handshake, every foreign investor now carries the risk of influence. Who is giving money, and more importantly, what are they expecting in return? As reported, many of these international deals opened multiple channels for anyone to funnel cash to a sitting president, often in ways that are untraceable. Think about that. The person with access to America's most sensitive decisions is simultaneously receiving money in ways that no one can track. That's not just unethical, it's frightening.
Many of the deals open multiple channels for anyone to funnel cash to a sitting president, often in ways that are untraceable.
This isn't about policy, it's about profit. While ordinary Americans are struggling to pay rent or afford healthcare, Trump is out there making sure his name stays printed on golf clubs, leather shoes, and overpriced cologne. And instead of working to stabilize the country, he's stabilizing his bank account. When a president sees public office as a private business, the people lose their voice. Every decision is up for sale, and the longer this continues, the harder it becomes to tell where Trump the president ends and Trump the salesman begins. It would be easy to say Trump is just greedy, but greed alone doesn't explain everything. What's happening now is something far worse: desperation. According to internal financial records, Trump isn't simply trying to get richer. He's trying to stop everything from collapsing. His business empire, the one he used to brag about, is now full of holes. Properties are failing, income is drying up, and debt is catching up fast. This changes how we need to look at his behavior in office. Trump isn't just making deals for fun. He's doing it because without that money, the empire falls, and if that empire goes down, so does his power, his reputation, and his legal defense. That's why everything he touches, policy, foreign relations, even religion, is now tied to profit. He needs every possible source of cash, and the presidency is the only thing keeping the money flowing.
An analysis by the New York Times of thousands of pages of internal Trump Organization documents filed in one of the legal actions against him suggests a more urgent motivation for Mr. Trump's behavior, a need rather than simply a desire for easy money to keep his empire intact.
Think about the consequences of this. When a president is acting not for the good of the country, but out of personal financial panic, every national decision becomes suspicious. Is this trade deal good for America or good for Trump's golf course? Is this foreign policy about safety or about covering a mortgage payment? When survival is the goal, public interest is no longer part of the equation. And all the while, Americans are left behind. People are losing healthcare. Costs are rising, the economy is unstable. And while the public suffers, Trump continues to make sure his businesses stay alive, even if it means draining the nation's trust.
Even as he is tanking the US economy, which he is definitely doing, even as he is ripping healthcare away from millions, he does still seem to have a knack for using his job to make money for himself.
Trump's son, Eric, boldly claimed that 2025 would be the strongest year in Trump Organization history. But that success doesn't reflect the health of the country. It reflects a system where the most powerful man is using the Oval Office as a safety net for his collapsing fortune. In the end, this isn't just about corruption, it's about control. A man using America's most powerful position not to serve, but to survive. And in that desperate mission, the real cost is paid by the American people.